Feliz Navidad, Feliz Navidad, en justicia y libertad.
Welcome to the Magnificast, a podcast about Christmas this week. I'm your co-host, Matt Bernick.
I'm your other co-host, Dean Deloff.
Ho, ho, ho. The time is finally here. For the last 4 weeks, we've been having to really restrain ourselves. We've been saying every week, it's not Christmas, it's Advent. But this week, it's Christmas. Or probably. Maybe it's shortly after Christmas. Maybe it's a little bit before. But it's, Christmas. In the grand sense of cosmic time, it's as Christmas as it's going to get.
As long as you're listening to this podcast, it's Christmas.
That's right. This podcast is a portable bit of Christmas. You put it on in July even. It's Christmas now. Metaphysics, it's crazy. Anyways, on this podcast, we usually get up to all kinds of, deep conversations about politics and religious stuff. And that's great. I mean, it's why most people listen to us in the first place. So I don't want to squander that.
But wait, we're about to.
Yeah, but we're about to. But this week, it is Christmas, so we're going to take it a little bit easy. We're going to have the first ever Magnificast Christmas party. It's not going to be like a regular Christmas party. And I don't mean to say that like it's going to be really cool, unlike regular Christmas parties. I mean, it's a podcast where we're going to talk about Christmas stuff, and it's going to be great. So on our Patreon, you might not know this, but on our Patreon, we have a second paywalled type of podcast called The Lock-In, where we host a fictional youth group, and we give good Christian advice to good Christian teens. So for this episode, we thought we were going to dial it back a little bit. We're going to take a little bit of a breather from talking about, I don't know, like violence or Marxism or whatever. I mean, we'll probably talk about that anyways, but we're gonna devote a little bit of time to answering some of the hottest and most pressing Christmas-related Christian questions that we could find on the internet. And then we're going to talk about all of the good Christmas current events that are happening. So if you're unfamiliar with the Patreon podcast, this is basically what we do every week. We come up with some questions that people ask on Reddit, and then we talk through them and make sure we can come up with some good, sound Christian advice for them. What am I missing, Dean? Is that it?
That we do the Reddit and we do current events, so it's a nice way to, I guess, talk about what's really going on in the world instead of some of the thematic stuff we usually do. To give people maybe a window into it, as Matt said, it's a fictional youth group. The idea is that your parents have dropped you off, you're stuck with us, you're two youth pastors, and we try to imagine all the wild quirks that our own youth pastors have demonstrated over the years, I guess, and embody the most cartoonified versions of them, but we don't go too far into it. It's a loose, imaginative exercise, and I think one thing we do need to do for this, Matt, though, is decide what's the atmosphere here. Is this like the youth group Christmas party where you kind of go, you do get a little bit of the Jesus stuff in there, but really you're there to watch, like, some big Christmas movie and just kind of yell with your friends? Or is this more of a classy thing? Do we have like, a fire by the side where we can all sort of drink our cider and just share in the revelries of the season? What's the vibe for this kind of Christian Christmas party?
Yeah, that's a great question. Okay, you know what? I could describe it with my words. I could paint a word picture of this Christian Christmas party that we have going on for our fictional youth group. But instead of painting a word picture for you, I'm going to give you a smellscape.
Okay,
and
great.
You can kind of go from that. So it's sweaty. It's stanky. It also smells like Papa John's pizza and also Axe body spray. So that tells you everything you need to know.
Right, and then maybe
about this youth group that we have.
And maybe also like some sort of like Febreze holiday scent just sort of mixed in there from some enterprising parent who was like, I had this in my car.
They're trying their best. They're trying their best to get the stank out of these futons, but it's not.
It's never coming out. And you can't burn them because we're in a climate emergency. All right, Matt, I'm going to start with one Reddit question for you to open it up here, and I think it's going to take us a minute, so I'm looking forward to your response. The title is Church Christmas Party Help. And yeah, I know. What an appropriate time to talk about it. The body of the text goes like this. We have a church Christmas party happening in the next couple of weeks, and I'm still unsure how I should order the program. And I'm going to read you the program. People will be arriving at 6 p.m., then dinner around 6:15 p.m. There are about 30 people, so I assume dinner will be done in around 30 to 45 minutes. Here's a list of what's happening, and I'm not sure in what order to have them. A Christmas play, which will take 20 minutes max. A gift exchange. This will take around 30 minutes. Dessert, Christmas carols and worship, that's about 30 minutes, and speeches. I was thinking to have Christmas carols and worship last, but I feel like people would leave straight after the speeches. The party will finish at around 9 to 9:30 p.m. Any other ideas or suggestions would be much appreciated. So, Matt, this desperate person has given us sort of the building blocks of a great Christmas party that does include some speeches. And I'm just curious about how you might order this and what kind of suggestions you'd have for such a Christmas party.
This is so complicated. Is this are there any details in there that I missed about the age group? Is this like a family event?
It's just a church Christmas party, and there are about 30 people.
Oh boy. See, if this was for teens, I would know exactly what to say, but the family makes it that much more complicated. Let's see. People, they hate eating in silence. You got to put the speeches right there during dinner when people are eating. You got to get a good speech going. What kind of speeches do you think people give at a Christmas party like this?
That's a great question. It really depends on the age group too, doesn't it?
Yeah, I would love to get up there and just tell everybody my biggest qualms with the movie The Santa Claus.
Right.
I think that's what my speech would be about. It'd be all about how Tim Allen really did screw it up, and how we can all learn from our past mistakes in the way that he did.
Okay, sidebar though. The thing about the Santa Claus is a wild Christmas movie, and I do think we can just sort of bracket this question really quick to talk about it because it has been on my mind, and I've been in at least 3 separate conversations about it this year alone. I don't know if it's just like around in the air or it's just in my own brain and I'm kind of projecting that into the world and then finding it, but there's a lot going on in it. I'm just gonna, in broad strokes, explain what goes on in this movie. First of all, when Tim Allen does take on the mantle of the Santa Claus after the first Santa Claus dies, everybody remembers that part. The wildest thing is not a single person mourns his death when they get back to the North Pole. Like, everyone just sort of accepts that Tim Allen is stepping in, and the old Santa Claus was, I guess, like an awful despotic ruler. They all feel pretty good, or they're like immersed in their own work. It really seems like Santa's either incidental or a person not worth mourning, and I think that is a very important piece left unsaid. Also, how wild is it that the Santa Claus is like an extremely conservative movie about how like the one villain in that film, besides I guess like the police who don't understand. The one villain is his ex-wife's liberal psychologist husband, who is like, I think you should probably see a therapist. Anyway, a bad movie overall, a typical Tim Allen film that I will watch in the next few days.
Yep, it is a bad movie. It's so interesting that it's come up so many times in your life though recently. That's a synchronicity. Somebody might be orchestrating something on the metaphysical realm for you.
It could be Tim Allen himself. We're both Michigan.
It's him. He's back there practicing his dark arts, trying to get you to watch his great movie about him becoming Santa Claus. Him murdering Santa Claus. Him manslaughtering Santa Claus, I guess. But still, it's his fault in the
Right.
end.
It's his fault, and he doesn't even plan a funeral. And also,
Oh my God.
okay, the second one, though, in the second one, the whole plot of the Santa Claus 2 is he has to find a wife, or else he can't be Santa anymore.
That really, like, we don't need any more help reinforcing sort of heteronormativity, and I think that movie, it did its work, and it was bad.
Yeah. I mean, it sucks, but also, again, just returning to this previous Santa who's out of the picture, like, I guess if you're Santa and you died, is your wife just sort of dematerialized, or she gets, like, banished into the cold of the North Pole? Like, what is going on here? Or, I don't know, maybe he was still dating around. He, too, was a new Santa and just kind of hadn't quite figured it out yet. But, I mean, his timer was ticking as well. The rules of these films just
we
not
need the
thought through.
prequel where the Santa that Tim Allen does kill, he just got the job like a week before. He just accidentally murdered Santa previously, and now he's gonna kind of jump into it all.
It was like between houses. The dirty, awful Robert De Niro Santa Claus. He only had it for maybe a few different cities, and then Tim Allen really swooped in on the same night.
So the original question was what we're going to do with this Christmas party, and I think this is it, right? This is the speech that people need to hear. They need to, this reminds me, like in monasteries, right? There's always one of the monks that has to sort of during the mealtime give some kind of reading or from some kind of like moral source, right? The monks, the brothers, they need some kind of moral instruction during their dinner, and I think this is exactly what you're suggesting here. So kind of taking a page from the the great tradition of Christianity and like, proposing that people need to listen to this tragic story of the Santa Claus who did get murdered.
Yeah, and I like that too because what you're doing is also collapsing some of these items into the same thing. Why separate dinner and speeches?
Absolutely.
Why separate dessert and Christmas carols? Right? They can all happen at the same time, and you're going to get out of the party quicker if you do that. And I think that is what everybody really wants at the holiday.
Yeah, I do. Exactly. People do want to get out of there. First of all, having it end at 9:30, no way. This is like come at 6:30, end at 7:00. Let's just do it all at once. Let's do it all at once. We can eat dessert and then also do worship music all at the same time. And I think people just kind of figure it out. It'll be a messy occasion, but it's great. That's what people want. People are dying for this.
Yeah, and we'll see how far we can get reading the Santa Claus script. And if we get to 30 minutes into the film, that's great. And if not, that's fine too.
All right, great. Well, we've solved it. Do it all at once. People don't want to be there in the first place is the thing that people need to know about church. Especially social events. All right, well, here's one for you, Dean. This is a tricky one. So, again, for people who are not initiated to the sort of Patreon podcast, I have been going into the depths of the Catholicism subreddit, finding the most deranged questions I can find. Sometimes deranged, sometimes completely arbitrary and normal. But I give them to Dean because he's the sort of he's the only person that can really speak to the big pressing issues within Catholicism these days. Okay, so Dean, here's one for you. This one seems normal on the face of it, but I feel like there's a lot of weird stuff going on here, just beneath the surface.
That's Catholicism. I don't know what to tell you.
Okay, so the question is this: can I shop for Christmas gifts on a Sunday? Right? That's it. That's the whole thing.
That's all.
That's the thing, man. Yeah, can you do it on a Sunday?
And there's no body text or anything.
There's not. And this was submitted 2 days ago. This person has a limited amount of time until Christmas. They need to know.
I think they passed the one Sunday that they could have maybe done. Let me think. Okay, so it's just Christmas gifts. It's not anything else. It's not like
just Christmas gifts.
And right, that's the qualifier. I'm just trying to think of what would it be about a Christmas gift that would prevent you from shopping on a Sunday. What if this question asker clearly is concerned about, I don't know, like this is a holy day and maybe I shouldn't mix my consumerism and my Christmasism at once. So I think maybe you only have time to go on a Sunday. Just hack it. Go to mass on a Saturday. No problem. Go to mass at like 6 p.m. or whatever it is, and you're good to go. Free Sunday for Christmas shopping. Just do not shop on the Saturday.
I always forget that Catholics have sort of like these workarounds for things like this. That like you can just do Sunday. You can do your moral obligation to go to church on Saturday, and then you can like on Saturday night even, and then just hang out Sunday morning. That is a pretty good deal.
It rules. My parents took great advantage of it when we were kids because they did not want to like get us out of bed. So they'd be like, well, we're going to Saturday mass. We've got nothing else to do. No basketball practice tonight. Well, let's all go to church and then we can all sleep in. It's a great hack.
Yeah. Yeah, I think so. So later down in the comments here, people are asking, rightfully, why couldn't you do this? What's wrong with going Christmas shopping on a Sunday? And the OP says, well, it supports unnecessary labor.
So I would say do not go shopping on Christmas. 100%.
Oh, absolutely not. If you're a boss who does make your employees work on Christmas, yikes.
Yeah. Yeah. You know what? Okay. I try my best not to be like I don't know, like I try not to live my life where I'm sort of calculating up like the moral scale or like the moral quantities of every little decision that I make, because that's a bad way to live your life. I've tried it. It's not good. But the one thing that I definitely 100% am like an extremely hardline stickler on is like I will never ever spend money on a holiday. It just feels like evil and violent. As a person who did work retail and had to work on holidays, it is the absolute worst thing to be like to see people happy coming into the place where you are stuck working is an awful feeling. So this holiday, don't do it. Don't spend a single dollar on Christmas. Or Christmas Eve, or Boxing Day. Just forget it. Just stay home.
It's a good idea. Listen, sometimes it's hard, especially when you're traveling. You gotta get gas or whatever. I don't know. It's such a hard thing. But don't do it. But don't do it if you can. It's such an important thing. Making people work on Christmas is horrendous. I hate it. I think making people work in general is bad, but Christmas, it's especially bad.
Yeah. All right. we've done it. Do you have any other questions
Oh
over
yeah,
there?
I
Is
have
that
one
that?
more that's really
Okay, all right.
There's a lot going on with this one. This might take a few more minutes. Okay.
Great.
So this one's not Christian. Sorry, this one is not Christmas specific, but you'll see the search term I was using in the body of this one.
Okay.
Okay. This is a tough one. Like I said, would it be illicit to pretend to read a relative's future in order to tell him that he needs to chill? So one of my relatives has an anger problem. Oh my God. One of my relatives has an anger problem, and thanks to a YouTube video about how and why astrologists lie to their customers, a lot of things. Listen, I don't endorse this. I got the idea to engage that relative by pretending to read his future with the sole intention of letting him know that he has to stop being a Grinch already.
Mhm.
So, is this illicit? Normal conversations won't work, as he will always find ways to turn it into an argument. He hates receiving unsolicited advice. So, Dean, on its face, this is not a Christmas question, but I'm going to add the provision that this person is angry during Christmas. I mean, we're coming to this time where maybe you're going to see your family. Maybe your family members have bad political opinions that they're going to tell you a lot about at Christmas dinner. So in that scenario, if you were sitting around the big Christmas dinner table and then your Uncle Jeffrey is telling you all about Joe Biden and how he's a part of the Illuminati and he's also going to eat, a baby or two, would it be illicit to pretend to read Uncle Jeffrey's future in order to tell him that he needs to chill out?
No way. I love it. This is a great workaround. Nobody wants to talk to Uncle Jeffrey about being angry. It's just going to make him more angry. But I love the idea that you could sit him down and say, all right, look, let's do a really fun, simple thing. It's not an intervention, nothing like that. I'm going to read your future. And then you do say, yeah, you should chill for sure, because what I see is high blood pressure. I see, whatever, you're going to hurt yourself, etc. And also, it looks kind of like you're gonna buy me a new video game for Christmas. I don't. It's just what I see in the palm. I think you can really ride this grift pretty hard in your family, and you can be the future person, and you will create the future that you say. So it may not even be false. You might not even be lying. You're just sort of you're putting into the world the desire that you want, and who knows, maybe you yourself will find it there. And listen, if Uncle Jeffrey turns out to be a little less mad, that can only be a positive.
Okay, but in your example here, you said that you see high blood pressure in his future. You see, whatever. And okay, fine. But would you put it in the form of astrology for Uncle Jeffrey? Is that a sin?
I think right, astrology specifically. If Uncle Jeffrey is down to listen to the stars, that's great. But I think you're going to have to expand your repertoire, because you are going to have to learn palm reading. You are going to have to learn just sort of a variety of, card reading and so on, just so that you can kind of keep the grift going too. Let's say it doesn't happen. You don't get the video game for Christmas and someone calls your bluff. You can say, yeah. No, the stars, I was too much of a novice. What I'm really good at is palm reading, right? And you can just kind of keep cycling around.
So, Dean, what I hear you advocating to the good people of the Catholic subreddit is that they should practice witchcraft and the occult.
No. See, that's where you're wrong. They shouldn't practice witchcraft in the occult. They should lie. They should lie about practicing witchcraft in the occult. It's a completely different thing.
Okay, that makes a lot of sense. I agree with you. I think that this is a great strategy. Family, they're impossible to talk to. It can be very difficult. Lots of things going on in the background there. So what if you made a big lie that would make them listen to you? I think that's cool. Somebody in the comments says, no, soothsaying is wrong and lying is wrong. But this person should shut up. They don't know Uncle Jeffrey. And I agree with you, Dean. I think this is right. Yeah. Lying to your family
You're not
is okay,
saying sooth,
as long as you're, doing it for a very good reason.
Yeah, it's so important to identify and underline here. You're not soothsaying. You're not saying sooth. You are just you're doing somebody a favor, and it's in the case of Uncle Jeffrey in particular, it's no different than being like, I don't know, did someone get a bad haircut? Yes, but should you tell them it's a bad haircut? No. I think it's an even a higher level than that. What you're really doing for Uncle Jeffrey is saying, look, these are the natural consequences. This is the direction your life is going to take, but I'm packaging it in such a way that you're not going to feel like I'm calling you out.
Yeah, that's cool. I mean, there's so many directions you can go with this too, right? Like you could start reading some tea leaves. You could bring an assortment of
Yeah.
like knuckle bones to kind of cast and scry or something. I mean, there's a lot of stuff you could do here for Uncle Jeffrey.
You can pull the hair out of the drain if you get desperate. I mean, there's no place that it ends, and that's really the beauty of the strategy.
It's great. Well, we are hoping the best for all of you and your Uncle Jeffrey's. Your uncle's Jeffrey.
Right.
It's a tough time. Christmas is always weird, especially with pandemic raging. It is just weirder. I don't know. Hopefully everyone's safe and healthy and not dying. That's the best. That's what we want for you. Cool. Well, we've answered these very Christmassy kinds of questions in the most Christian way we possibly could by advocating for you to lie to your family. But now we're going to talk about some upcoming or current events, or maybe just some articles that have come out very recently that have to do with Christmas. This is the part of the podcast that we just talk about whatever's going on, kind of in the given week. So, Dean, what's happening? What's going on? What are Catholics all talking about for Christmas?
Who knows? I couldn't tell you. But what I can tell you is something going on this week that is Christmas related. And this is also, I should say, usually the point of the podcast where we make a bit of a tonal shift, and we're about to make one now for sure.
Oh, it's not silly anymore. That's the thing you gotta know.
Yeah, we're putting the goofs away for a minute. This is an article in America Magazine by Kevin Clark, a person I really like, who edited almost everything I wrote when I was writing a lot for America. So a good person that you should read. He wrote this article called Patriarch Saba, This Christmas There Is No Peace on Earth in Bethlehem and Jerusalem. And it's a good reported piece, just talking about Palestine and issues around it. And I'll kind of read a few quotes from it in a second. But I was happy to find it because I recently watched a film called Open Bethlehem, which was a really interesting documentary about sort of like, I mean, a lot of things, but really exploring the bizarre landscape of Bethlehem specifically. And like, so Bethlehem, okay, I don't know. People who listen to this podcast probably know, right? Israel is colonizing and settling Palestine in these really, really brutal ways. Palestine is basically an open-air prison. It's a very bad situation. So in this documentary, it looks at Bethlehem, the town of Jesus's birth. That town is actually in Palestinian territory. And in the film, they're kind of like chronicling Israel building this wild wall that is like cutting the town of Bethlehem in all these weird ways so that they can like cordon off different particular like holy sites and restrict people's access to them. It's like very bad and really wild, obviously. But what was so moving about the documentary, I think, is the way that it does kind of trade on all these different ways that like Bethlehem as a place should be a sort of open place, and it is also a symbolic resistance to building walls up to, hurt other people and so on. And anyway, it really got me interested too to kind of learn more about like Christian voices for Palestinian liberation. And there are a lot of those. There's a whole Palestinian liberation theology movement that is really fascinating. So anyway, all that to say, I stumbled across this article by Kevin, and it's really good. So a few important words that are said in it. I'll read a little bit. In a sobering message from the Holy Land, the Latin Patriarch Emeritus of Jerusalem, Michel Saba, urged Catholics in the United States to acknowledge the little town of Bethlehem as it actually is this Christmas, not as it is depicted in song and tradition. Amid the nostalgia and ancient memories of the first Christmas in Bethlehem, there is today a long-sustained religious romanticism, he said. He called that Christmas time romanticism understandable but not realistic. When you celebrate Christmas, remember that in Bethlehem, in Jerusalem, life is not a Christmas life. It is not the blessed life of the new redeemed humanity. The song of the angels is far away. And he goes on to say a lot of other things as well, talking about the trauma of that kind of life and so on. And then he says later, with the focus on the child Jesus, we must ask anew, what about the children of Bethlehem of Palestine? What about the required protection and human security for all of God's children? In the face of the Israeli occupation and insecurity, children suffer, natural innocence is stolen, random violence and vulnerability robs mothers of peace for their children in Bethlehem and throughout the Holy Land. I think, go read the rest of the article. There's more important stuff in it and so on. But I think for me, it is really important to kind of keep reading that stuff, especially at Christmas time, because, like I think of those songs that you hear, like A Little Time of Bethlehem, or even, like Silent Night, these songs that paint a picture of Jesus's birth as being like super placid, very calm, totally sanitized, that kind of thing. And not only do those songs do sort of a pretty severe injustice, I think, to like the actual radical situation of Jesus's birth as the liberating Messiah, but also today it sort of like it paints Bethlehem, for instance, as this mythical place that is I don't know, like an oasis of peace or something, when it is literally a place where people are like being starved and killed, daily. And like, what an incredible and awful contradiction to the thing that, millions and millions of Christians around the world are sort of thinking about right now at this very moment, but not thinking about that literal, physical, geographical site. So it's a good article. I encourage people to read it and to learn more about Palestinian liberation, I guess, this Christmas.
Dang, what an amazing thing. That is really fascinating. I mean, you're right. Like, I don't know. I was at church this past Sunday and heard all about, Mary's pregnancy, and they're going to different places and, in the early parts of the gospel, getting ready for Jesus to be born or whatever. But those are like our real places. It's not Middle Earth. There's a real thing happening there, and the people there still struggle, um, under a type of colonialism. Woof. Well, cool. I mean, it definitely gives you a different vibe about Christmas. I think for sure, probably for the better.
Yeah, always good to find those political themes in the Christmas story, but even better to try to see what they actually do for us today.
Yeah, totally. Well, speaking of political themes in the Christmas story, I got a good one for you.
I'm ready.
Okay, in Time magazine, that's right, the Time magazine that did just put Elon Musk as the cover as the person of the year. Recently published a very very brief article by the Reverend William Barber II. You might know him as I don't know, the Poor People's Campaign guy, the guy who's in charge of the repairs of the breach. I don't know. He's kind of within the world of like Christian social justice for sure. Everyone knows him. If you don't know who he is, I don't know. Google William Barber, man. You'll be pleasantly surprised. He's a very cool guy. And I like him a lot. I've said on this podcast before, and I'll say it again right now. Anyways, I digress. This just I think 2 days ago in Time magazine, he wrote a very brief article that I think is actually really important, even though it is short. It is called "What Low-Wage Workers Understand About the True Meaning of Christmas," which I saw that headline and I was like, okay. But I was nonplussed. I was not convinced this is going to be a good article, but I thought I was going to read it because I don't know, why not? What else am I doing with my life?
Mm-hmm.
Anyways, I want to read 2 chunks of this article, and then we can talk about it maybe a little bit.
Yeah,
because I think there's a lot going on here that would be good for conversation. But it's also, I think, some really fantastic rhetoric. Christianity, if nothing else, has a powerful rhetoric to kind of call the things that are unjust in the world out in a really stark way. And this happens for sure in a lot of Reverend Barber's work, but in this one particularly. Okay, so like I said, it's going to be a chunk. So just strap in for this, for me reading this. It's like this podcast is becoming an audiobook. Just get ready. Okay. The manger scenes that decorate homes and churchyards this time of year remind us the first century shepherds were the original witnesses to the good news of Jesus. The low-wage workers of their day, shepherds in first-century Palestine, were either young boys from poor families or migrant workers, the same class of people who work for less than a living wage today in the food service and hospitality industry. The angels in the Christmas story do not entrust the message of peace on earth, goodwill to all people, to the religious leaders, to the politicians, or influencers of the ancient world. Low-wage workers get the news while they are working in the fields. They walk off the job and become the first witness to the Messiah's birth. As we celebrate in 2021, low-wage workers are again walking off their jobs in historic wildcat strikes that many Americans have misunderstood as simply, quote, supply chain issues or a slow economic recovery. When COVID-19 shut down much of the world in 2020, the low-wage workers who stock shelves, deliver food, and clean our public spaces could not work from home. They continue to show up in person. Often traveling by public transportation on their commutes and at their jobs, they were the first to be exposed to an airborne virus, the first to get sick and the first to die. In the early months of the pandemic, poor and low income Americans were the single group at greatest risk of death from COVID 19. At the end of the article, Barbara says this. At this critical moment in the story of American democracy, the message of Christmas that the shepherds first proclaimed is the good news we need. This is why the Poor People's Campaign will continue to organize for voting rights and investment in the people. It's why low wage workers are willing to walk off their jobs en masse to insist on better wages. It is why we are planning a mass Poor People's Assembly and more March in Washington. As we celebrate Christmas, may we remember to listen to low wage workers and heed the good news they are still proclaiming for all people. Okay, I really like this article for a lot of reasons. First of all, Reverend Barber's right. I think this is like I mean, at the end, right? He's talking about COVID and he's talking about the people who like really still have to show up for work, the people whose work is, made invisible by all kinds of different capitalist mechanisms, whether it's just like a weird mentality about how work gets done, or it's like the literal hiding of people in like warehouses or in the back of shops or something. Right. So drawing attention to those people are great. But I think the larger religious and spiritual point here is really fascinating. Connecting the shepherds who are the first people to get to Jesus being born to like actual low wage workers walking off their job, I think is really amazing. And connecting up the struggle too, right? The drawing the parallel between workers finding like the good news of their empowerment, the good news that they have a voice when they stand together, the good news that a strike works to make your boss pay attention, to the good news of Jesus coming to kind of like overturn the world. That's as good as it gets for Christmas, I think. I don't know. I think when it comes to Christmas, largely, I'm very much of a Charlie Brown kind of person. It's too commercial. I don't want to do any of it. I think it's very annoying. But I think that Reverend Barb is right. That if Christmas is about anything, it's about flipping the whole world upside down, and people who are already at the bottom, people who are service workers, who are low wage workers, who are farm workers, who are always getting the shit end of the deal. They're the people who are going to tell us all about it.
Yeah, I like that. And it is so cool to kind of hear someone like Reverend Barber who has the courage to make those parallels really direct, to draw a line from the shepherds to low wage workers in a way that makes the text creative and alive for us today, instead of just being like overly concerned about some kind of literalism or whatever.
What you need to see about the wise ones, that they're actually Zoroastrians.
Yeah, exactly. Like,
who cares?
It's so important to like activate the text in that way. It reminds me too of like there was so much of that happening at the height of the labor movement in the U.S. and Canada both. Like in the kind of first half of the 20th century, like it was definitely not unusual to find pastors who would go out of their way to talk about Jesus the carpenter and upsetting the equivalent of the Board of Trade back then, right? That's how people would talk about it. And there's a lot of power in kind of making those resonances between Christ's time and our time more clear. In the Renaissance, people would always like paint pictures of like all these folks in regular Renaissance European clothes standing around Jesus and these kind of crucifixion scenes. And there's something about that like I think today people are sort of afraid to do. It's maybe like a weird combination hangover of like modernist obsessions with like getting things scientifically accurate and like fundamentalist anxieties about like departing from the text, both of which kind of miss everything that is interesting about the Bible. So it's cool to have Reverend Barber connect some of those dots for us today at Christmas time.
Yeah, I agree. The approach that Barbara's taking to the Bible here, and just like you mentioned a minute ago, right? Like the approach that many Christians have taken who've been active in the labor movement. It's not about what they're doing is speaking prophetically. They're making connections that actually make a difference for people. It's not just like, I mean, listen, exegesis is great. Biblical studies are fine. I'm not particularly interested in that, but I know that other people are, and it's probably for the better. But like, there is a tendency, I think, for very intellectual Christians to like just kind of be like, nerds about it in the worst way.
Mm-hmm.
You have to be a nerd about like whatever something meant in the particular cultural moment or whatever when the gospel is written. And I guess that's important, but also like if it's not speaking to people in the moment, if you can't draw these types of parallels now where they actually matter, then it's hard to make me care in particular,
Yeah. Yeah.
Um, yeah, I don't know. You can be you can bracket some of your nerding out about like, I don't know, cultural moments, the cultural history of like Palestinian people or whatever in this like first century for like what these like these documents and like tradition of reading them might actually mean for Christians.
Yeah.
Um
It's kind of
but
like it's like what does it mean to get the text right, I guess. And like getting it right in kind of an academic or scholarly way is certainly one way to get it right, I guess, and an important one, like you said. But also getting it right in a kind of spiritual sense, I think, is to, make it work. Like make it do something in the world. Like Reverend Barber is getting it right by like being willing to just kind of play fast and loose with it because the workers are the people that Jesus wants to hang out with.
yeah, I think that's right. So I don't know. This holiday season, it's good to make those connections in our own brains and I don't know, leave the biblical scholarship aside for a minute and see what we can do with the text or like what it helps us do or something. Um Anyways, it's a cool article. And it is really important in a time where I think like low wage workers and service workers, I mean all workers in general, but like workers who make very little money are really being hung out to dry. Um the whole the Biden agenda that we've talked about in previous weeks about Build Back Better hasn't really come through, and it probably just won't. It probably is now dead, because of a very annoying politician, named Joe Manchin, and he sucks, and like whatever, we can all be mad at him. That's fine. But anyways, like I mean, that's these types of things are really important because like this holiday season, there are people who won't be getting the child tax credit anymore. There'll be people who aren't getting unemployment. There are people who, they'll have to go to work sick or they'll have to miss a paycheck, right? That's a real decision that they're going to actually have to make. So I don't know. Let's hope that they walk off the job and show us a better world's possible or something.
Yep, let's hope for it for sure, and also try our best, I guess, to create the conditions for them to do that. Donate to strike funds, whatever. Find your local 5 for 15 people and give them some money.
I mean, just
Um,
like go find where people are on strike and like go out there. I mean, it's happening all over the place these days.
yeah, it's true. Yeah, you can't escape it.
Or you can
Well,
also just like give a call to a place that is on strike, or give a call to a place that is kind of in the middle of a labor dispute, and just try to talk to them about it. You're gonna find something very fun, and that is that managers and the owners of those types of places, they don't want to talk to you, but if you want to talk to them, you can make their life very annoying. At the very least, you can help them